The reason that I've asked Phoebe to do this session is not only has she had Bella, Miranda, and more recently Henry going through areas for about the last decade, I think, and all three of them then progressing on to BE as well. But she has been the go-to for any questions for those pony club parents that are starting to sort of transition towards doing sort of proper grown-up eventing with their children, as to how to navigate the British Eventing website, how to enter, what to enter. So I thought it was actually quite helpful for Phoebe to answer all of those questions in one go, rather than have no doubt 10 parents all phoning her at different times to ask all of the questions once the season gets started. So as I said, any questions, just pop them in the chat at any time. And I think what we're going to do is start with pony club areas, because hopefully everyone here is aiming towards pony club areas either this year or in future. So Phoebe, can we get started just by having a think about if anyone is aiming for the areas in July, what they need to be thinking about at the moment, and knowing sort of which level to aim for and what they should be doing in preparation?
Well, what I always do with the kids is when we finish the season, say last October, we all have a chat over what goals are for the following year, and what they think, the kids think, their strengths and weaknesses are, which sometimes are not what I think their strengths and weaknesses are. And that's the weakness that we really try to train and compete on. Not much competitions this year at the moment, through the winter. We're lucky enough that one of our weaknesses is normally the ones on the surfaces, not the cross country, touch wood. So it's the easy winter activity to try to polish up through the winter. Dressage always used to be our weakness, and I think it's probably more like show jumping now. But the winter is that time to see where you want to get to and make plans accordingly, filling in your weaknesses and training like mad. So important to do combined trainings, adding the two, dressage and show jumpings together, which there are loads of these days, as well as just doing straight dressage competitions or straight show jumping competitions. There's fewer and fewer cross-country possibilities, but there's a lot of arena eventing. We've never really done that, but again, the plan that where you want to get to, which level you want to get to, you should be trying to, at this time, try to show jump slightly within your own ability, but pushing the boundaries a little bit, keeping the confidence going, which is key throughout it, but trying to push those boundaries so that your weakest phase is then easy when you come to event.
So that suggests sort of competing throughout the winter, so you're not just going out at your sort of first event of the season, sort of rocking up at Elmwood, having not competed since last autumn.
That is the case. I mean, we try to go to a competition every other week through the winter. Try to, whether it's West Wilts combined training or just clear round show jumping, brilliant dressage series in lots of the indoor schools locally, and just keep your hand in, because any dressage test is a good dressage test. Good thing to learn. You learn things, you get other people's opinions, another set of eyes, and you can never do too much actual competitions. I think
you can't do too much actual dressage either.
Oh.
And what about starting to look at if you're wanting to do a particular level, for example, this summer? So if you're wanting to aim for, I don't know, the Pony Club Novice, so the 90 centimetres, where would you start your season?
Really depends on the child's education, what they're doing this summer. especially if they're in a year group where it's important exams, I try to start earlier and earlier so that then you can back off nearer exams, because we've all got to remember our children's most important thing is education. But we start off in December, January doing show jumping competitions, then adding in a bit of dressage, and then seeing what's going the worst, and try to add more of that in. If at all possible, taking a trainer with us to a competition, so then they can help and actually give you then more feedback in your lessons over what you need to do. And I find that quite key, actually, because your child is a different child at a competition. Sometimes the pony is as well. And it's good to have them to be able to see why it's going right and why it's going wrong. Eventing wise, we're always very keen beans, and we normally start at the beginning of March. Again, just to get some more experience, so you don't have to run your horse or pony too often. And then you have time to back off if you want to, and give the whole thing a bit of a break and know what you've got to do then to get to your goal. I think if you start too late and then do it in a hurry, that puts more pressure on the child and the pony if the going isn't right.
And this year, I guess the season's going to start later, but then there's no exams. So, you know, it's going to work a little bit.
Don't tell Henry that. I'm still telling him his A-levels are going to take place.
And do you come back out at the beginning of this season? Will you start off at the level that you were at the end of last season? Do you drop down, or do you go on the reckoning that you've been doing so much dressage and show jumping over the winter that actually you can carry on at that same level?
Okay, it sort of depends how the season has gone. I mean, certainly with Henry's young that we've had since it's 5, we dropped it back a level for its last event of the year, just to make sure all the wheels were still on. It did win it, so that's fine, and that's the level we'll start him on this year. If a horse has got a lot of experience, I think you probably can start them where you finished off. But as a norm, we would start a level down to where we want to go, to give the experience to the pony and the child, and to make sure confidence is there, because if you lose your confidence, then you lose everything. Confidence is key.
That first event of the season, you've got that added stress of, have I remembered everything? Have I packed everything? And you know, getting in a muddle with your studs and everything else that's going to go wrong.
I know, Mrs. Hargreaves, I left behind my number bib last year and you had to lend us one.
Yeah, it's quite a lot of stuff to pack. I think the bizarre things we've had to borrow, including on a couple of occasions riding boots and things like that. And actually, when you're in the wrong size boots, or you're wearing the wrong bit, because you're just not organised, because of that whole first event of the season thing that suddenly just it's on you. The last thing you want is then to be worrying about the level you're at as well. So nice, easy run first of all. And by the time you get to the big competition, so your aim, so for a lot of us, it would be the area competition in July. How many times would you have wanted to have a comfortable run at that level before you get to that date?
I think it really depends on how experienced A, the rider is, and B, the horse is. I would be very happy to have had 3 good runs at that level before the areas, if everything else was going right and if they were super consistent. And quite often I would want to have done something a little bit more in some cases than the level that you were going to go to the areas at. Yeah. Because then the areas are always slightly more difficult than your actual normal competition. And particularly the competitions at the beginning of the season are always easier than what you find later in the year, we found. So I'd always want to have one under my belt at a higher level than what I'm going to be competing at a championships in, at least, and then be consistent at what you are aiming for.
And as a rule, we found in area 9, yeah, I think in area 9 we tend to have quite a punchy area competition because it's a really competitive area, and it shows once area 9 members get to the championships, they tend to do very well at the championships, whereas everyone else is kind of, you know, falling like skittles. But you know, it's quite an achievement to get around the area competition most years, especially, you know, Dauncey is one of the harder courses around here. And what about if you're choosing the different courses? Is there a big difference between an 80 centimetre or a 90 centimetre somewhere and an 80 or 90 centimetre in a different course? How do you know which courses to go to so that you're not ending up accidentally at a sort of championship level?
Well, I've always asked my friends, and I think there is a huge difference from one set of competition venues to another. I've always studied shoestring. On shoestring eventing, you get, for the BE events, all the fences, jumps up. And going back to Harry, Henry's horse, young horse, well, not so young now, when we first moved up to novice, he didn't like jumping into water, and that was his thing. He didn't mind it if it was on a flat, but he didn't like to step down to water. And I spent hours and hours on shoestring, just looking at all the fences and seeing what was suitable for that horse. We ended up going to Sussex, park next door to a Pony Club mum's sister down there, and quite by chance, the whole way to Sussex for his first novice, just to avoid a step down into water. Thank God he went clear. But, you know, it was, there is so much info out there. You can always people that you've seen who's been there the year before, and everyone's so happy to talk. And Aston Walls is, dare I say, always a lovely course. Show jumping is always beefy there. The distances are always slightly long. And again, it also happens with the show jumping. You know, if you go to Lark Hill, it's on the side of a muddy hill. If you go to Aston Walls, the distances are always slightly long, bigger. And actually, Dauncey was always a very fair show jumping. But again, that's identifying your own weaknesses and what you don't mind. Upton is a square cross-country course, but it's a very fair cross-country course. I wouldn't say it's a difficult one. The show jumping there is always beefy. And actually, we've had our biggest show jumping rounds at Upton, and the most difficult ones. So, you know, again, you have to sort of be critical of your child and realise what they're good at and what they're not so good at, and try to balance up the different courses to the different children.
And presumably,
unless you just want to go for it and that's what's convenient, that one over there, and then you go for it.
Go for it. And it presumably, some of it comes down to whether you're trying to get a good sort of qualifying round because you're wanting to get a good score for, you know, in order to get into the A team for the areas, as opposed to an educational round where you're going to want it to be a little bit harder and, you know, perhaps a sort of broad way to test their fitness and so on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I totally agree. We wanted to, you know, test last year, the novices, we kept tipping up to quite nice ones and they were very soft. So we wanted to test Harry again before we took him to a 2-star long up in Northumberland. So we took him the whole way to Little Downham because we knew we were going to get a tricky course there, and sure enough we did, which was great. But that's why we went there.
Yeah.
Show jumping's nicer though too.
And yeah, no, and I think that is the key, isn't it? Finding the right one for the purpose that you're looking for.
Yeah. And you shouldn't be stepping up a level if you're not frightened of it, if you are worried about a difficult cross-country course or something like that.
So actually, that's the test, isn't it? Is if you're comfortable with any course. So starting on the sort of slightly easier ones. Is it more consistent with BE than unaffiliated, or generally are? I mean, I think in our area we're quite lucky because Fran runs some really good ones through horse events. So they tend to be, when she says it's 90 centimetres, it is 90 centimetres. But do you find there's more or less consistency?
Funny enough, all the unaffiliateds we've done, they were school ones, some were other ones, have been more difficult cross-country courses than what you would have got at that level. Can you still see me? Sorry, my daughter's just...
No, we've lost you entirely now. Hopefully, Phoebe can find her way back in by pressing buttons on something. Areas for this year, I'm not too sure where. I think it's going to be Dauncey, I'm not 100% sure, but we're going to have the 70s, 80s in one place, and then 90 and 100 in another, and then those going for open are actually going to be doing it through a BE event, and those at open can also do what's called direct entry. So for direct entry, if you have gone, now just it needs to be clear cross country and less than 4 poles show jumping, at 2 pony club open competitions or at 4 BE novice competitions, you can get direct entry into the championships. But otherwise, it's actually going to be at a BE event this year. You don't need to be a BE member to be able to enter it, but the open will be at a BE event. Now that looked like Phoebe was rejoining then, but I still can't.
Sorry, my eldest phoned me up and it completely spun me.
They have a habit of doing that. We got you back. Yeah, let's. Yes, there we go. Superb. You're back. We were just talking a little bit about where the areas are, and perhaps the important bit on the areas from the point of view of qualifiers, that we try to have, I mean, exactly as you've described, encourage people to have 3 runs as a minimum of that level beforehand, because you do not want to be going, you don't want to be going straight out at that level or not be completely comfortable on it. But the actual score doesn't matter. As long as people are getting round and they're clear cross country, it's incredibly rare for them not to be in a team. But if they're also going clear show jumping and getting a decent dressage, then they're likely to be in a, more likely to be in the A team. And if the aim is to try and get to the championships, that's the team you want to be aiming for. Does that sound about right?
Yes, and the championships has been the highlights of our years for, as you said at the beginning, I mean, countless numbers of years. So my kids, it's really been their ultimate goal every year has to be going to the areas, and if they're lucky enough to qualify, going to the champs. Because it's super fun.
How many open eventing championships, or how many eventing championships do you think you've been to?
Henry's done novice, intermediate and open twice. I don't know if the girls have been. They've done the show jumping quite a lot, because show jumping was more their sort of key. I can't remember, probably about 6.
Yeah, that's pretty
4 of them
impressive.
with Henry.
And he's had two open wins, is that right?
He has had 2 open wins, yes. But that was a team win.
Yeah. So if he's going to do it properly.
He was individually placed at every single one champs.
Yeah.
We've been to. Yeah.
Yeah. Good.
But that's all to do with planning and getting the right lead up to the whole thing, making sure that you've done your homework. And yeah, you're not arriving at the areas or the champs with an exhausted pony or child. Well, the children are all exhausted, but an exhausted pony because you've overrun it and you're too close to the time, and therefore not getting the best out of them.
Yeah, no, I think that's really good advice. So starting now, work backwards from then, And hopefully everything will all click into place. And actually it's quite useful. We've got one of the quite late areas generally in July, so we tend to be about 3-4 weeks before the championship. So it tends to be a matter of, if you then qualify, it's just a matter of drilling the dressage. You want to already be at the cross country level, so that you're then just drilling the dressage and show jumping until you're ready to go.
Definitely. And yeah, it's just practice on those two. And it'll be a trickier one this year, I think, with Upton being the open one, because Cholmondeley is, oh no, they're going to Gackham. Okay, cancel that. Cholmondeley is normally quite a difficult cross-country course, but they're not doing that anymore, are they not? Where is the champs? Where is the champs this year?
It's not there. I can't remember where it is. I was going to say Bishop's Burton, but it's somewhere like that. It's
that's the
off Churchbury.
Young Riders.
Oh yes, yeah, Esther's right. Off Churchbury. Yeah.
Oh, okay,
with
so
everything there. Yeah. And Esther's asking, what time gap would you recommend between each event?
Well, it depends what time you've got. Last year we had the one run before lockdown, and I know I totally overran the horses, and I'm not, hopefully don't have to do that again. I would like to compete them no more than twice a month at an event. And if I can get away with once every 3 weeks, I would prefer that.
Yeah, that sounds about right. And there's going to be quite a scramble for everyone to be getting out, and some people might be thinking about doing BE for the first time this year, especially if the unaffiliated events are all going to be unbelievably oversubscribed. For those thinking about doing BE, do they need to join as a member? Because there's obviously day tickets there as an option. What would you recommend? What are the advantages and disadvantages?
Well, the problem with doing it on a day ticket with BE is the fact that you're the first to be balloted. And with the late start, it's going to be the same for everyone, unaffiliated and BE, in the fact that the balloting, particularly on the 80, 90 and 100s, will be savage. It was after lockdown 1 last year, and it will be again this year. The bonus of being an absolute member is you get ballot tickets, but also your super ballots, where you can use them on your 2 key events that you really don't want to be balloted out of, and then you won't be balloted out of. And you can even enter one that you're not sure you really want to do and use your ballot sticker as well. And then if you get balloted out using your ballot sticker, it gets sent back as a super ballot. But don't tell anyone I said that.
That's a top tip, thank you.
That is a very, very good top tip. And the other top tip I was given, and I don't know whether this is correct, but it seems to be, is if you volunteer to be a fence judge.
We always fence judge. We always fence judge, yeah. Miranda, I paid fence judge for me.
Okay.
But she really enjoys it too.
Because I think it's worth doing, isn't it? Because it's really good experience watching, and it gives you a completely different perspective. You know, when you then hear a child saying, I definitely did jump that jump, and you go, you know, as a fence judge, you notice absolutely everything that happens in front of you, and it's well worth doing. And if it means that you don't get balloted out, because there is nothing worse when you've carefully planned and you know when your 3 runs are going to be, and then one of them disappears, that's not great. And the difference in cost between BE and unaffiliated compared to, because there's some around us, we've got quite a few courses that you can either run through BE or unaffiliated round the same course. Is it worth the extra cost to be doing it through BE?
It's not a huge amount of difference. And I don't know about the insurance side on an unaffiliated. If it gets cancelled, do you get your money back? Or how much of it you get your money back? And be a very, very, last year, even the COVID cancelled rounds that I'd entered, we got our money back, all bar a small amount. Be eventing, the reason, we're lucky enough to be able to do that. It gives me more flexibility on dates and where to go to, because sometimes I'm needed elsewhere, and so I can't just say, right, on the 12th of June, that's what we're doing, and I need the flexibility. So was one of the reasons why we started BE rather than doing unaffiliated. But there are so many unaffiliated events now, and actually the one Pony Club eventing is the one place that there aren't going to be huge amount of balloting. So that's where you really want to get into, are the Pony Club events if you're not a member of the BE, because they have to accept you before they accept the adults on young horses.
That's worth knowing. And Alicia's asking a little bit more about the ballot. What is balloting and how does that work?
Well, every day, particularly with COVID rules, competitions are only allowed to run a certain number of competitors per day. And there's a strict sort of hierarchy within the classes that they are running on that day. So say they're running a B90, a B100 and an intermediate, an odd mix, but might be what they're running. They have to have all of the intermediates there that enter, and then they start balloting the 100s and the 90s, so they can get down to the number that is the maximum number for that day, which I think with it's about 200 competitors in a day. And yeah, not everyone can go if they have 800 entries, say. That was an extreme, but that did happen last year. Lovely places like Aston Walls just added another 2 days in because they have that ability. So then many more people got to run when they in the vague date they wanted to run in. Yeah, it's a luck. And with British Eventing, you get stickers that you can put on your entry that mean you go up the pecking order in the ballot, and your postcode is irrelevant. So it doesn't matter if you only live 2 miles away. That has no relevancy to your entry, oddly enough. However, if you're doing an under 18, it does, because in under 18 you go into regions, and we in the old Berks, I think we are all actually up central region, and if you enter something of an under 18 competition in your region, then you are picked before people from Norfolk, Sussex or other regions.
And it's worth actually registering if you are under 18 and you're doing BE. It's worth registering on the under 18 programme, isn't it? There's a place.
Yeah, you have to register every year. You have to re-register at the level that you want to compete at with each horse that you want to compete. So you don't just think, oh, I've got, if you're lucky enough to have 2 horses and you've just registered, you have to do every horse, and you have to have registered with them, with the under 18 team on the computer through your BE website prior to entry.
And we are right on the cusp of 2 areas, because I think, am I right in thinking that you originally were
Southwest? Yeah. We were Southwest for the first couple of years. A lot to do with the fact that Sorrel Warwick, who's the Southwest coach, is also one of my kids' coaches. She comes here quite a lot. She actually used to teach me when I was 16. That's how old Sorrel is. So we went with her Southwest, and when we were pony trialing, a lot of the qualifiers were down there as well. So Alden, Bicton, Pontypool. So it sort of worked for us. But we are actually in the central, the very southern edge of the central region, and we're now back in central.
Yeah, and I think the downside of central is it is a very competitive area. It's in fact Central and Wales, bizarrely, they've put in together. But, and that's then Kate Scott Wilding looking after that area, who some of the older members will know through Area 9 training. She does some of the examining of the higher levels. So it's quite nice that she sort of scoops everyone up. And one of the benefits of being on the under 18 sort of program, as it were, is they keep a little bit of an eye open for anyone coming through that is some training. It's not as good as rallies. It's not subsidized, so it's very much like rallies, but a lot more expensive and quite often with the same instructors. But they
very varied, isn't it? They're
yeah.
very varied as well sometimes in the group abilities.
Yeah, as you say, it seems to be a sort of smaller pool. You would expect it to be all absolutely at the same level. And you touched on earlier on taking a trainer with you to a competition. Can you talk a little bit more about that? And also for those that don't have somebody to take with them, there is the ATT classes, which are a really good introductory BE, where there's actually a trainer there that you can use. So pros and cons of that.
Well, all the under 18 section classes, there's always a trainer there who is part of that under 18 area. They will walk the course with you, and they will also help you if you ask. I mean, there is so many people out there who will give their, will help. And you just have to look a bit lost or ask, and they'll step in. If you're walking the course and you don't know the best way to jump that fence, there's always a pro or someone older than yourself there who knows how to do it probably better than we do. So, and gosh, I've asked so many times, much to my children's going, "Oh, Mum, you're so embarrassing." Yeah, I mean, I'm lucky. We've had a few trainers over the years that are very nice and very flexible, and mainly Sorrel, and more than happy always to come to a competition with us. And I think I've booked her up for about 6 weekends next year already, or this year. And yeah, to help, to sort the nerves out, to walk the courses, just, yeah, they don't have to say much, but they're very pacifying. But the under 18 classes, they are all there. Sorrel's always the southwest one, and they're all there to help.
And I think you can't underestimate that benefit of having somebody there that knows you, knows the child. You would never have it in a sort of a team situation. Even for the areas, we wouldn't dream of sending anyone to the areas or championships without a coach, because it's so essential it makes a big difference to the results, doesn't it?
Yes, a huge difference, and a huge, especially if a child's a bit gosh, we all get nerves into a competition, otherwise you wouldn't really be wanting to do it. And they're very good with angling those nerves in the right direction and making them competitive nerves rather than nerves of, "Oh, I don't want to do this," sort of thing.
Yeah. And is there a sort of going rate? Do you know if there's I just look at how much you pay an instructor per hour and think, my goodness, if you multiply that, and plus they're driving a long way.
Yeah.
I won't
have to comment.
It's as bad as I assumed then.
I try to negotiate before I get there.
Yeah.
Depends on who I use, but it's generally £100.
Okay. And presumably, if they're going to be there anyway, because they're competing,
it's free. For the under 18 lot, it's free. And we'll always go to. We do tend to still do some of the under 18s in the southwest, because then we get Sorrel to warm you up for free.
Yeah.
Because she's there anyway and working. So, but we've got Simon, who would more than happy to, I'm sure, if you asked him nicely, to warm up for an under 18. I think at the moment he's the only coach in the central region, but we've been southeast as well. Mark Corbett, always happy to help and walk the course with you and warm him up. And actually there are always timed course walks with the coaches, and they are actually very, very good to go on, because if you get chatting up the coach on the course walk, even if you don't know them, you can then get some help before the dressage or the show jumping, which is, quite key.
That is,
because they're always there watching.
That's really, really useful, actually. And just looking at a few of these questions. So once you've registered, can anyone enter an under 18 event?
once you've registered either under 18 or BE, you can do an under 18 on ticket, day ticket, but you have to either have a day ticket or be a member of BE. Yes, as long as you're under the age of 18 and you're on a horse that is not 4 years old. You're allowed on a 4-year-old in an 80 after the beginning of July, but other than that, they have to be a 5-year-old plus.
So can I just say, sorry, we are BE registered. So how do we register for under 18?
It's the registration for the under 18, regional under 18s, and all youth registration is coming online from the 20th of February. And you go into the BE website, you go onto youth competitions, I think it is. It's under compete, then youth, and then you'll get 3 different boxes. You get the regional, which is 14 to 21s. You get the junior performance, which is 14 to 18, and then you get the young riders boxes. You go onto your regional section, and then you just keep clicking the boxes that says register me now, and then you have to go in, register for you and your horse, pony, and yeah, and then you get a nice little letter back saying thank you very much for registering, we look forward to seeing you.
Thank you.
And there's for BE 100, which is equivalent to Pony Club Intermediate, and for BE Novice, which is equivalent to Pony Club Open. There's also a sort of team competition in the summer. So there's no particular qualifiers for it other than, I think it's mainly the under 18 competition.
No.
You've got to do 2
I'm
of
afraid
those.
so there are qualifiers, yes.
So 2 of
there
those.
are qualifiers for those 2. So the qualifiers for the 90s, 100s and novice. You have to have done 2 qualifying events in your area. One of them has to be in the area, the other can be anywhere. But you can have done one last year and one this year. It has to be you and your horse. And you have to have gone clear cross country in both.
Superb.
And what each region does is choose 10 people from their region to go forwards to their championships, which is all the regions against each other. And this year it's being held at Bishop Burton at the end of July.
Fantastic. And the other thing from the point of view of which competitions you can enter, for BE 100, I'm just looking up, you need 2 MERs at BE 90. And if you're in the year of your 12th or 13th birthday, it needs 2 MERs as a combination, each with no more than 12 show jumping penalties. So Phoebe, can you talk us through what MERs or MERS are?
MERs are, gosh, it keeps us mothers reading our rules handbook for many an hour. But basically they are the minimum level that you have to get to move up a level. You have to do a dressage, I don't know, do they specify it? Show jumping, it is under 16 jumping faults, and cross country, it's clear cross country with under, I think I'm correct in saying 30 time faults. However, on a multiple MER, you are allowed, so say to go up to novice, you have to have done 4 100s. You could have stopped in one of those hundreds cross country to be a counting score if it's a multiple MER.
So that possibly answers, and does that answer Bella's question of what age would you expect to be competing at novice at? I don't know, is there a minimum age?
I think, I don't think you should put it by age. It's sort of what age you should be. Is you talking novice pony club or novice eventing? Novice BE?
Novice BE.
Novice BE. I mean, you shouldn't, I think when you're ready,
Yeah.
is the answer. And, you know, it's beefy for a little one. You have to have a minimum of 14 hand pony. And my God, they've got to be able to show jump, those little ponies, because that is what is their downfall on the whole.
Yeah, because that's for, so pony trialing is competing at novice level, or in fact it's 2-star now, is that right? I can never remember.
It's competing at novice level, actually. And they are, if you go into a pony trial rather than an open novice under 18, you benefit from the, if you're on something that's small, a pony, a 14.2 and under, you do benefit from the distances being changed in the show jumps. And if the trainers deem the cross country to be something too tricky for the ponies, they will take it out.
Yeah, that's really, really good tip. Hey, good one here from Nicole. So do you have to have a dressage saddle?
No, there are loads of people out there doing dressage without a dressage saddle. Definitely not.
And I think I would add to that quite a few that, especially at the beginning of the season, who might have a dressage saddle and choose not to wear it.
Don't use it. Yeah, let's always have a neck strap. But it's, yeah, no, definitely don't have to have a dressage saddle.
Superb. And now a final one. This might not be relevant this year if we're all going to be locked down. But
no, we're not going to be. Be positive. No.
We will be positive, and we will think about lovely road trips. And one of the things that I didn't appreciate quite so much at the levels that we could have been doing it was the fun of competing overseas, because you always assume that you've got to be an Olympic rider to be competing overseas. And then we discovered Ireland and Belgium, and I mean some events that actually were closer to get to almost than getting to the Pony Club Championship.
Our plan this year, after all this planning, got to compete, got to be sorted. Henry's first event probably of the year, if it goes ahead, and if we're allowed to go, is North Holland, 3-day event, international. Okay, he's taking an experienced horse because he had a sat-nav error at Osberton last year. So we're chasing a qualification, which is what exactly at the beginning of all this, I said never to be doing. Try not to chase your qualifications, because that's not a good place to be in. Anyhow, so we are in the position that we are on one horse. And so I've got here about 6 pages of information and paperwork to set sail on if it goes ahead that we have to have filled in and done.
Joy, excellent. I thought by sat-nav error you were going to say he thought North Holland was nearer than it was, but that's not.
No.
But other than the fact there's paperwork, obviously they need their vaccinations up to date, and there's a few if you're wanting to go on the tunnel, there's a few restrictions from the point of view of horse.
Yeah.
It's actually something that anyone can do. You just need to find the events and let
find the events.
know.
You have to apply to BE to be able to enter them. Generally, unless you're a racehorse, they don't go on the tunnel because it's unearthly expensive, and it's gone up again this year. £400 for a truck, plus then I think it's another £300 per horse in your truck, which makes it ludicrous. And then once you've got permission from the BE, you can then enter in the normal way on a computer directly to the event, but you have to have permission first. But yes, there is a huge rigmarole of equine tests you have to have had 2, which start up to 90 days prior to wanting to go abroad. But I've had, basically you need at least a month and a half pre-prep on paperwork now.
Youch. Gosh, what are the extra tests? Is that equine herpes, presumably?
Oh, there are lots. Okay. You have to have a vet certificate, and you have to have had, all the broodmares have them, always. So, I mean, my horses are all tested for these things, but you just have got to get a correct vet, so a vet that's that is seen by these organisations. It's all on the BE website anyway. And after the next 4 weeks, I am open to questions because I've got to read all this. But it did only land in my lap this morning, so from Daryl. So I haven't actually read all Daryl's words of wisdom yet.
Brilliant. So not impossible to do, but an awful lot easier to stay in the UK, perhaps.
I would highly recommend what we did last year if you want a real road trip with a big competition at the end of them, either the under-18 championships, which of course we didn't do last year because it didn't happen, or Birgham up in Northumberland. It's almost abroad, and it's in England, so it's easier. And
there's a lot of our branch are up there. I mean, I was slightly surprised. We broke down on the way up there last year and had to go through the centre of Newcastle with an exhaust hanging off. And actually, when we got there, it was just so nice to find that, you know,
there were loads of us all up there,
wasn't it?
It was so much fun because you travelled 6-7 hours. Everyone still spoke English. And there were loads of your friends and everyone wanted to have fun.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Superb. Do we have any other questions at all? Or I think that's
a bit like the Pony Club Championships, might I add.
Yes, yeah. And you say for the championships is very often the first sort of stay away event. And I think, you know, it's at that point. And it's a shame that it tends to be the more competitive children that do it, but there's absolutely no reason whatsoever why anyone can't go and compete at a BE 90 at the other end of the country. Absolutely no reason.
Yeah.
And, you know, go and make a weekend of it and take your bikes and have fun. So yeah, no, I would really encourage
easy like me, just got an electric bike. But no, they're great fun going away in events, and you know, you can pick ones near a friend and go and stay with your friend. And well, of course you can't do it at the moment, but you know, it is a good way of doing it.
Yeah, and I think it takes the pressure off the actual competition as well, because you're there for a nice weekend away and to have fun as well. Superb. If there aren't any other questions, can I say a huge thank you to you, Phoebe, for sharing so many words of wisdom, and I'm sure you won't mind me saying that if anyone has got more questions.
Actually, it's quite a good question. Can I ask this one question out loud that's just been put up?
Yeah.
How will we select area teams if lockdown carries on and they don't have results? I would have thought rather like the, I mean, I don't know because I'm not DC, but your results from last year will count.
Yeah, absolutely. And this is where, exactly as you said earlier on, chasing results isn't helpful. You know, anyone that thought, oh, well, wait until next season to move up. It's always worth trying to end the season, you know, sort of almost where you want to be next season with that in mind. So yeah, it will be very much done on where people were at the end of last season, because if there aren't any competitions for us to get results from, it would be really, really irresponsible for us to say, oh, I'm sure you'll be fine. There might be cases where people have moved on to new horses and new combinations, which I think will be a matter of us using discretion in training. And it's quite rare for us to do that. I think the last time I remember doing that was when a young member on a 14, was it 14? Yeah, it must have been a 14-hand pony. Safi Osborne appeared, having not done much in the way of qualifiers. And Ross said, no, I think she'll be safe for the open team. And yeah, she's gone on to, you know, win medals at Europeans on the same pony. So there are occasionally times when somebody will look at a particular combination and go, they will definitely be fine at that level. But the only way to know whether the wheels are going to fall off at a 90 centimetre competition is to know that that combination has done a 90 centimetre competition.
Done it before.
And it really is just about, it's got to be a fun experience. It's got to be an enjoyable day. I mean, doing the areas or doing the championships is all about being there.
And you're always riding in part of a team too, so you don't want to let the rest of your team down either. Yeah, as you say, I think much better to know that you're going in really confidently. So yeah, hopefully we will have, and I think it's more likely that Pony Club will bail out of their competitions before Fran. You know, Fran was the first to really get going with events last year.
So I think Fran is likely to be the first. So if nothing else, we should have unaffiliated events running in the area. So everyone that's not already volunteering to be a fence judge for Fran, get out there and volunteer. Because, you know, I don't know whether it makes a difference, but it's hard to imagine it's not going to help you get through the ballot. You know, if you compete one day, fence judge the other day, is probably worth doing. Superb. Brilliant. Thank you very, very much indeed, Phoebe. Much appreciated. And anyone joining, I think, is Henry on Thursday? He is, isn't he?
Thursday, yes.
So on Thursday, we're going to hear from Henry about how he managed to get onto the under-18 development squad. Or youth development squad as it is now, isn't it? So yes, it will be same time, 6 o'clock, and Henry is going to be answering some questions without me prodding him with them. So he has some questions, and so anyone that can think of questions for Henry before then, get them all geared up and ready. Otherwise, we shall see you hopefully on Thursday.
Brilliant. Thank you.